Hi, Nicole. I'm so happy you're on the show. I feel like this has been a long time in the making. So welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Erin. I really appreciate it.
I asked you to do the show, and then you posted a bit of your story on Facebook. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's so perfect that you're here.
Just
So
not a story.
we want to hear. So on the show, we are women who are either already in a leadership position, we're launching our passion out into the world, or maybe we've just started our healing journey.
Mhm.
And my listeners come to the show to be lifted up, to be inspired. And we'd love to hear these stories of what happened. What was the moment of transformation? What was the other day I had someone on the show and she said, I hit rock bottom and then I found out there's a basement. And the basement was where she like totally woke up.
That actually rings true to me as well. It's like I feel like we have these plateaus and we think, oh, I'm done. And then there's like another thing that we need to address, but that is part of evolution. And so now that I know that, I welcome those moments of time. But that does make sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we want to hear, you have a beautiful coaching practice. You're an incredible healer. You've built this gorgeous community. And I know that a woman doesn't step into that role as leader without having gone through something. So tell us about your transformation and how you launched your business and found yourself in this role of leader.
It's so interesting when you said that about the community. I thought I would never have been able to do all this without the community, that held me throughout all of time and space. And so I'm so grateful for that and connecting with you and other women through this process. My story starts really in, I would say, 2001. So that year was like a really radical kind of year of transformation and awakening. So it was the year that my dad passed away. And that year, I was stepping out of, let's say, corporate America. I was starting to have these stirrings in my body, like a calling, like I wanted to do something more impactful and more around service. It was something that I always wanted to do. I remember even when I was a young child saying in my nightly prayer that I hope that one day I get to help people. And I didn't know what that meant then. It just was a thought that I had. And it was important enough for me to pray about that every single night. I wanted to serve. So when I started to have that feeling within my body that like I wanted to do something more impactful, it was around this year of 2001. So I started taking all these acting classes and just like creative things, just to kind of figure out what was my passion, what was this stirring. I wanted to find more creativity. I was feeling very lifeless and bored I was actually in advertising and marketing. And this woman actually stood up in a meeting and she said, we were arguing over a logo. I remember this very vividly. And the creative team, the account team were arguing over this logo. And she said, Jesus, people, it's not like we're saving lives here. She got up and stormed out. And I thought, wow, that was bold and courageous. But it did plant that seed within me to think, yeah, we're not saving lives here. And what did that mean? So that kind of propelled me into taking classes. So I got actually a role as a lead in a play. It was like one of the first things I ever went out and auditioned for. And I was freaking out. I was very excited. And then I got the call from my brother that my dad was failing in his health. And we didn't know why. We didn't know what was going on. And I thought, well, I'm the lead in this play. How bad could it really be? And he kept kind of checking in with me. He's like, actually, it's getting worse. It's getting worse. We heard that he had brain tumor. So I ended up having to cancel that play. I left. I went to New York and found out that on my dad's, he was literally on his deathbed, that he had been suffering from AIDS. And I found out in that moment that he had AIDS my entire life. And he contracted that when I was 7 years old. And so I felt in that moment like, wow, my life has been a complete and utter lie. That was my interpretation of that. And I went into like grief and anger and all of these things. However, I also knew in that moment that my dad was dying and like what to do. So I sat by his bedside. I only saw him for one day. I sang him songs. I prayed with him. I held his hand. I did everything in my power that I could do, which is fun now because I love to sing. So I got to sing for him, which was really special. And I went home and I said, he's going to die tonight. I just knew that. And I remember very vividly walking to the mirror around like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I looked in the mirror and my hands, just my arms went up like this. And that was the gesture he made when he saw me come into the room at the hospital. And I knew in that moment, I said, my dad passed through my body. I could almost feel that. And I said, he just died. And seconds later, the phone rang and the hospital said he died. And so it was like a great trauma and also a huge blessing at the same time, because that was what connected me for the first time to the understanding of us being conduits, really, of spiritual energy and having a connection to the unseen realms that was unexplainable or inexplainable. And so I had very strangely conflicting views inside my body. And I also had the thought, now I'm free. I remember saying that, now I'm free. And I thought, what does that mean? So all these thoughts and feelings and all this inner conflict and questions arose in me. And I thought, I need to unpack this. And that began my journey to self-help books and self-development, personal development, exploring what my passions were, why I had these questions. And that's how it all unfolded. And that year was also the same year that I discovered yoga. And so it started my yogic path, which really has been the way that I've led my life for the last 2 decades, is through the path of yoga and awakening and self-mastery. So, yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because I know the thing about feeling free when your dad passed.
Yeah.
I know the same feeling. I felt that way when both my parents passed, and they passed within about a year and a half of each other.
Wow. Yeah.
And it is very confusing.
Yeah.
Because like I love them. I miss them so much. I remember falling to the kitchen floor in tears because my mama was gone.
Mm.
And at the same time, I'm free. Like, and what is that? It's such an interesting question.
Gosh, it's such an interesting question. And, the way that I've come to understand it at this point in my life was I really led the life that my parents wanted me to lead. And I never knew that there was even an option not to do it that way. That was just the way I grew up. And I would venture to say probably a lot of us understand that, because that was a different paradigm and a different structure culturally than what we have now, which is much more around choice and discovering our passions. And we talk about these things now, but there's so many women, as we know, out there that have no idea what that even means. They're like, what do you mean? I just clock into my job and I do what I've been told to do, or what I could get. There's kind of that, or this is what I'm supposed to do or should do, versus this is what I want to do and what I'm passionate about. So,
Hmm.
and I grew up also in a Catholic household. And so a lot of that there was a lot of guilt involved, as many people can understand now, knowing some of their religious background and culture, that also plays a big role in how I viewed the world. And so a lot of my decisions were made based on like the Punisher in the sky kind of ideology. And now it's completely the opposite. I really see myself as a creator. I know you do too, of my reality. And so I had to, it was almost like going through the whole process of turning my whole life around from the inside out to develop it in the way that I wanted to develop it.
Mhm. And now I see the connection between what that woman said in the boardroom to this feeling of, oh, I'm finally free. And now how you help women wake up. You use the word priestess
Yes,
in
yes.
some of your languaging. And I think it's so important because we have been so held down for generations. My belief is that a woman in her true power is very frightening to the patriarchy.
Mhm.
Right?
Yes.
And so we've been squashed. But what if women were walking around saying what they actually think
Mhm.
and doing what they actually want? And
Ah,
I don't even know, like, I feel like I'm an empowered woman with
mhm.
a man who very much supports my goddess self. And I still get stuck in that place of not knowing what I want and being so tethered to what I think I should do.
Oh,
Do you
wow.
have advice for a woman who is in that place of transition where she wants to touch into her true inner calling, her true inner power, but that oppression of no, this is what you're supposed to do is so thick that she can't even hear her voice, like she can't even hear or touch into what she wants? How do you even begin to bridge that gap?
It's such an amazing question. And so many things happened when you said that. I had like all these versions of myself go, woo. What I have come to realize, I'll just say, is that through the process of yoga, because a lot of my path was through the body, that we have so many aspects to ourselves. In yoga, we talk about the koshas, which are the layers of our body mind system. So we have the physical body, the energetic body, the emotional body, the subconscious, or what I might call the inner child. And sometimes that's kind of our shadow aspects. And then we have our consciousness. And we've got all these layers. So to understand that we are so complex and multi-layered and multifaceted is really important for your question, because we need to go through a lot of those layers in order to get to our authentic self. So I've found that it's a combination of east meets west in a way. Western psychology is super powerful, and Eastern philosophy is really powerful. And when we combine kind of like coaching or therapy with some of the somatic practices, like let's say yoga, breath work, energy work, Reiki, doTERRA oils, whatever they are, then we can look at the body as this whole system that's talking to itself through these layers. And sometimes one thing will work really well for one thing, and another thing works for the other thing. So you have to see what works for each individual. But to get to the core of your question, I think that working on shadow work is really important. And what I mean by that is understanding the parts of ourselves that still feel powerless, because if we're talking about priestessing work or empowering work, we are going through collective trauma, we're going through lineage trauma, we're going through these traumas. This is what I believe priestessing is, or becoming empowered. We go through those experiences to get kind of like the full spectrum of what that actually feels like and embody it, to alchemize it and transform it. So we need to know what those things are. And we are, as women, empowered women, working through those traumas, like you said, being held back, being suppressed, being stoned to death, to all the other things that have happened to women through time. And we're alchemizing it now. And we're showing women through our own experience that there's another path, there's another way. So it's moving from the disavowed pieces of ourselves, or the repressed pieces of ourselves, to understand that kind of scarcity and victim consciousness, to a place of recognizing how we still play that out. To me, that's what the shadow work is like In what ways do I still am I still a people pleaser? In what ways am I being the martyr here and self-sabotaging? In what ways do I play the victim in my life? Do I allow others to persecute me? Right. And the more we become aware of that daily and check in with our bodies, like, does this feel good? I think that's probably the biggest one for me, at least nowadays, is like, does this feel good in my body? Is it a yes or is it a no? And if I don't know, don't just say yes because I think I should. I could even ask for time to process whether this is a yes or a no. So it becomes kind of like this, thoughts, but also what's going on in the body. That was a long-winded answer, but I hope it gets to kind of
Yeah.
what you
Yeah. I
asked.
mean, what it's bringing up for me is like, sometimes looking from the outside at someone who is a healer or a coach or a yogi, it can look very ethereal
Yeah.
and blissful. We're just sitting on our yoga mat, sipping our cacao, and we're totally blissed out. And what I'm hearing is it's the path of the warrior. And then that's the beauty of woman. Like, it gives me chills to think about. We can embody warrior energy and we can still be absolutely beautiful and feminine and lounge around on our sheepskin and sip our rose tea. But like, we can also collie up and slice a dude if we need to.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
And
And
it's so good. It's so, so good if we can embrace it, but it requires that we're willing to kind of like get into the muck and the mire.
yeah, and I love what you said because it kind of brings up like feminine and masculine energy, and we want to be whole human beings. And the holistic path is kind of like our fullness, right? What you said, that warrior, that inner masculine is really important. We don't want to get rid of that part of ourselves when we do feminine work, because if we do, we can be, like you said, really ethereal, also really ungrounded, and maybe not have the best business practices or not make money because we're not holding that space of clarity or direction. And then we also need to enlist our feminine so we can nurture ourselves and relax and listen to the intuitive hits and follow our passion and follow our hearts towards what we need magnetically to pull in, let's say, clients, or to match vibrationally to who we want to serve. And so we do need that full whole body, whole humanness, within ourselves. So I love that you brought that up. That's really beautiful.
So you said something about a nightly prayer.
Mm.
And I love this because it's something that I do. I feel like it's a really magical time at night and in the morning. And for a long time, I didn't, because I was like, I'm not Christian, I'm not Catholic. Who am I praying to? But I found it to be really beautiful and nourishing. So I'm curious, is there anything you can share with the audience about what your nightly prayer looks like and how someone could discover their own?
Ah, that's so beautiful. I how they can discover their own. That's such an interesting question. It took me a while to get a ritual practice in place for myself. I had a nightly prayer when I was young. And then as I got older, it became my morning ritual. I have a morning ritual that I do every day. And it's gone through so many iterations. The way that I encourage clients, let's say, to connect to source is through that prayer. And it's through ritual. It's just a consistency. And I ask them usually to start off really easy and really slow, because that's how I did it. If I am told you need to wake up and do a 30-minute this and an hour that, I would just never do it. I just knew myself too well. So I ask clients, if you don't have any sort of practice to connect to source, to just even set your phone alarm for a minute the first day, just tune into your breath, 2 minutes the next day, maybe ask how you could be of service, Asking how we can be of service is kind of an interesting question. So it takes pressure off of ourselves. Um, Sometimes I'll just have them sit in silence. Maybe the next day it's 3 minutes of silence, but to find ways that they find interesting and exciting, because I can't really tell anybody what is best for them in order to tune into source. So for some, it could be walking in nature. A lot of my clients I'll say, how do you connect to yourself, or where do you feel that there's a higher power? And they'll say nature. So I'll say, just go outside and have the sun just shine on your face. So it can be those simple moments that they connect into themselves, where there's the spaciousness, where the thoughts are less frequent, where they can calm their nervous system, and then they can add to that. So like my prayer, a simple prayer that I love, you probably know this prayer, the Ho'oponopono prayer. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. Such a simple prayer, so powerful. So when I'm feeling disconnected, or maybe feeling resentful or bitter or frustrated or mom guilt or whatever it is, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And I'll just sit with them. I'll say it to myself. I'm sorry to myself for having thoughts that feel disorganized, frustrated, or angry. Please forgive me to me. Forgive yourself. It's okay. You're human.
Yeah,
Thank you, Nicole, for this prayer, and I love you. And then I might ripple that out and say that to somebody else that I might want to forgive, or who's in my field, and so that became a simple prayer for me for a while. But yeah, personalizing it is really important.
The analogy that's coming to mind, which maybe it's helpful for me, it might be helpful for others, is we understand that we have to plug our phone in.
Yeah.
Like if we don't plug our phone in and charge it up, we can't run our business. We can't be connected to our friends and family. Like it's obvious, but it is funny because doesn't everybody get frustrated when their phone dies? My phone died. I forgot to plug it in.
I love that. I love that analogy. It's the best. That's the best analogy. It's so true. It's exactly it. You got to hook in,
We have to do the same. And for me, it's been a struggle because I don't necessarily believe in this Father God in the sky. Mm-hmm. I believe that, yeah, there's some masculine creator energy, but there's also feminine creative energy and so much. So finding my way with that, what am I plugging into? I know it's important to plug into a higher power, but what am I plugging into? So I've made it kind of an exploration. And I play around with different things. Like I talk to Mother Earth, I talk to the goddess, I talk to God, I talk to the Holy Spirit. And I'm like, which one feels like the right thing? I personally feel the best when I plug into this idea of mother, like the great mother. I feel the best when I'm held by her and I'm connected into her, because she is the creator of all things, in my opinion. And just like what you're saying, that's what feels good in my body.
Yeah.
My mind can go all crazy, but it feels so good in my body to lay down in my bed and go, Mama, great mother, hold me.
I love that.
It makes me like want to cry just to think about it.
It's so sweet. And it may change, like you said, throughout time based on also what we're personally even working on. I remember times, the Sophia Code is a book that you've probably heard of, but there's a section in there where they talk about darkness. And there was a moment in my life where I was relating darkness to something that was really negative. And it helped me reframe what darkness actually meant. And for me now, darkness holds a different frequency. Darkness in that book is what you just said. It's the eternal mother. It's the divine feminine. It's the space beyond space that holds everything. And it's the womb of creation. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, that's the darkness I want to be a part of, instead of rejecting, let's say, darkness and saying darkness is over here and light is over here and there's contrast. What if space and darkness holds all of light and matter as well. And it's this more unifying principle. And that gave me this really great reframe of everything being love and being held in the same ways that you described. And I thought that's what I'd like to be a part of. And I also think, like, if it's limitless possibilities, it's really the way that we get to define it also. And could it just simply be love, you know? So.
Yeah. I mean, what about that prayer? Just connect to love every night.
It'll just be love all the time, you know? So that's beautiful what you said. It's really great. Yeah. So
Yeah, I always find what you're talking about is it just relates to nature.
yeah.
Nature has a darkness, nature has compost, nature has fall and winter. And humans are so funny because we think that we're not nature.
I know, isn't that funny? In yoga, we are told that we are nature. You know, that's part of the principles of that. So it's like looking to nature as a reflection of who we are. And so I've had that viewpoint for a long time. But you're absolutely correct in that somehow we feel we're not participating in that. But when we get in tune with all the cycles, I love behind you the moon cycles and the chakra system. It's like when we start to recognize that we are the cycles of life, then it's a little bit easier to connect to nature too, as just part of who we are, you know, and that reflection of everything is participating with us. Yeah.
Good. So I want to weave back to this question we were exploring as our last bit.
Yeah.
And the idea of I'm trying to touch in with what I want. I have this feeling of what I'm supposed to do. And then we're women and we're mothers, whether we have brought a child forward or we have fur babies, like we're women, we have that mothering aspect of our womb. And so there is this tendency to then have a prayer, like you said, which is show me where I can serve. And I have that same prayer, use me, God, use me, that one that Oprah always talks about, I love. But then there's this intersection, there's this nuance of what I want, what I'm supposed to do, and oh, I must be in service. And how do you find the delicate dance between I must be in service, I must be mama, I must be wife, I must be servant leader. And then that aspect of like, well, I want what I want. This is what I want. Do you have any thoughts around that nuanced approach to it all?
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that? When you said it almost as if they were two separate things, I wanted in my body to like merge them together in that I'm really aware at least at this juncture in my life, that I want what I want through service. My desires, what I want, as long as it's coming through my heart, I feel like the heart and service are aligned. So it's kind of like aligning myself to my heart is that intersection. So I will always get what I want if my desires are coming through my heart, because my heart is connected to source, my heart is connected to God, and ultimately that is the highest, let's say, potentiality, or at least it's like the highest prayer, is to connect to God, and everything that I'm doing is that service through the eyes of God. It's like I may not always, so when you said want, I may not always get what I want, but I get what I need. It's like I might have these ideas like, oh, I want that, but I also know if I don't get that thing, it wasn't in the highest good of all. And it is working through the ego's expectations, you know, like, and feeling like we have to be disappointed when we don't get what the ego's wants. But I always try to come back to go get to your heart, get to alignment with your heart, get to align with source, plug in the phone, plug in your body to source, and you will start to align in that way. And then watch how the universe has things unfold before you, and really trust that process. It may not look the way you expected, but if you're aligned with that joy, excitement, and heart, it's in alignment with what's supposed to happen. Hopefully that makes sense.
What I'm hearing, and I feel like I'm in agreement with this, is it takes this certain amount of surrender, which is a feminine quality.
Yes. Yeah.
Surrender to the divine, the bigger plan,
Mm-hmm.
the source, the idea that there is this higher power
Mm-hmm.
that we are all a part of, we're all connected to.
Yeah.
And from there, our wants move us forward. Like we have to have these goals and these wants and desires. And sometimes they're silly. Like, I want a pool. I want a mansion with a pool. I want a red Ferrari. I want like whatever. I want, for me, it's always been like, I want organic food in my refrigerator and all the supplements and all the healers I could possibly desire. You know, we have these different wants and desires, but they're almost not real.
Mm.
They push us forward, they move us forward, but the true realness is when we can connect into that source and trust that our life is divinely guided, which, if I'm being honest, is extremely difficult for me.
Yeah, well, it is difficult. We're human beings, and we've been indoctrinated into this kind of like great 3D reality of consumerism and all these other things that tell us it's this way, that way, that way. So it is a navigation. There's a lot of obstacles and belief systems and things that are in the way that we have to navigate through. And I'm navigating through it too. I'm human, and so, but what's interesting about it is the more I get stuck in kind of that matrix of the illusion, like you're talking about, almost I'm not as happy. I know I'm not as happy. I'm not as peaceful. My thoughts start to become dense or darker in a more negative sense. And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm getting sucked into the matrix. I need to pull myself out. And so more than ever, yeah, like really surrendering to that divine guidance and meditating, having my rituals, staying on top of even breathing during the day and just going, oh gosh, where am I right now? Am I here in my body? Am I disembodied? Where am I right now? Getting control of my thought process. What thoughts am I having? But do I have to believe those thoughts? Do I have to grab on to the branches of the monkey mind that's jumping from branch to branch? Or can I be a bit more discerning? So it is it's a process of moving through all that. So I really respect what you said, and I'm there too with you.
And this is why we need each other and why we need community and support. And I can't imagine it. I couldn't go through a day. Part of my story is I've been extremely depressed and full of anxiety and using drugs and alcohol to cope. And at this point on my healing journey, I can't make it through a day without prayer, breath work, yoga, essential oils, nature. Like all of these things have become necessary just for me to function on this planet. And I think that's the gift of people like you and what you are offering the world, is for anyone out there who's listening, who's struggling with this, just feeling like you're not completely living your soul's purpose. You may need to connect in with a community, with a guide, get some of these rituals, start to learn them. And I know that you do beautiful breathwork ceremony, which I'm a huge fan of. So I am curious, what do you have coming up? How can we connect into your offerings, workshops, coaching? Tell us the goods and let us know what you're cooking up right now.
The goods. Well, I love that you brought it back to all of those things. It is about creating consistency and having the willingness to really work every day on personal development. People can connect to me. My website is Nicole, Nicole, Ananda. Ananda means bliss, by the way, and it's a yogic term. And that was a reminder for me. Actually, I changed my last name, Doherty, to Ananda for that recognition within myself. Nicole Ananda Coaching.com. And yeah, I have all sorts of coaching programs. I do one-on-one healing work. I do one-on-one coaching work, groups, and I love offering workshops, like you mentioned, and retreats. And I have a women's group called the Empowered Woman Visionary Collective online. So all of those things, you can connect with me on my website. And my passion, or my, let's say, signature course, is called the Empowered Woman. And that's a 12-week transformational journey. And it's about activating and embodying your confidence and igniting your passions and living a life of purpose, just like we've been talking about. And it's a magnificent, I'll say it's magnificent because at this point I've been doing it for over 10 years and I have lots of amazing results, which you can also find on my website. And my specialties inner, let's say, child and trauma healing. I definitely, because we are warriors of that and thrivers and survivors, I love really honing in on people's beliefs and how to change the beliefs and how to change the responses to those beliefs so that we can rewrite our story, basically come up with better habits like the ones that you say you have, right? We've overcome depression or these habits, these coping mechanisms. And now we get to step into better rituals and better habits that are really practical and really results driven. So I am results driven. I do have that masculine quality within me, and I like tangible, sustainable results. And that is something that you can also find on my website as well. So yeah.
Cool. We'll put it in the show notes.
Okay.
Are you on Instagram, Nicole?
I am. I'm on Instagram. It's under Unleash the Priestess. Unleash the Priestess on Instagram.
Okay, because I like to ask my listeners to go to Instagram and tag you and I and just post something in your stories about your top takeaway from this episode.
Awesome.
Share it out, help to spread the word. I really believe that this healing journey is better done together.
Absolutely.
So let's collect all the amazing people out there that are taking that path, that warrior path, and love and waking up and doing all the good stuff.
Woo! I love it.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It has been a pleasure chatting with you today.
Thank you so much, Erin. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.